how do we plan employment in a world that's heavily disrupted by automation? All of those things I think we can start doing, rather than thinking, should we or shouldn't we do AI? Because essentially capital markets will make us do AI because of the massive competitive advantage it brings and the returns it will bring for shareholders. So we have pattern recognition around us, and all these sort of technologies embedded in the world's sensors, like self-driving cars with ultrasonics and 3D point map based on LiDAR technology and stuff. I think physical cash is probably only got about a decade left before it's relegated just to simple edge cases. I don't think cash will ever become illegal in a country like the United States, for example, but it would become to the point where it's fairly useless because no one would accept it. Right?
And that is coming up next on Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show, so stay tuned. So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. We have created a tremendous community of bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ambitious, resourceful, and want to get things done. We brainstorm, support, and help each other out. So come join us. Navigate to bootstrapping.group, join today, and get the Startup Founders Technology Accelerator video series absolutely free. If you enjoy this video, then do let us know by hitting that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, then go ahead and hit that thumbs down button and give us your honest feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging videos, interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. If you're new here, please do consider subscribing, and do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host Manuj Aggarwal, and today we have a very special guest, Brett King. So Brett is a world-renowned futurist and speaker, an international best-selling author, and a media personality who covers the future of business, technology, and society. President Xi Jinping cited his book Augmented on the topic of artificial intelligence. He has spoken in over 50 countries at TED conferences, given opening keynotes for Wired, Texas, Singularity University, Web Summit, Economist, IBM's World of Watson, and many, many more. He has appeared as a commentator on CNBC, BBC, ABC, Fox, and Bloomberg. He has also advised the Obama administration on fintech policy and advises regulators and bank boards around the world on technology transformation. I'm so excited to have you, Brett. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So, you have a very diverse background, and you have wealth of experience. Can you take us down the memory lane and tell us about your early beginning of your early career? How did you get started, and how did you move into artificial intelligence and technology?
So I used to be a byte ripper, a coder.
Okay.
The sort of the vernacular. Years ago, I started as a programmer. I actually left high school and went straight into programming, and then studied at university part-time while I worked. So, and then ended up dropping out of university because the work got too much,
I see.
And so then, but long story short, I ended up teaching university 15 years later. So ironically, it wasn't much of an issue. So yeah, I started as a coder, working for some big sort of software houses back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. So I started with Thorny in my software sciences. I started as sysadmin and then became a coder. And then went from there to a Lend-Lease Corporation, a big Australian business, primarily in construction, but they had a payroll division. We produced payroll software on the minis, the mini frames, not the main frames. And then got into end-tier computing as sort of LANs and everything kicked off. And had my own business, my own software business, starting in about 91, 92, 93, that sort of time frame. And I built a software business around real-time clocking in and out at factories and generating payroll records from that. So handling employees, at large factory installations where they'd previously been using a punch card system. And I was able to convert that to make stripe cards, barcodes, even fingerprint readers. We used as an interface for that.
Cool. That's awesome.
And then 95, I bought an ISP, an internet service provider business, in addition to the other stuff I was doing. And then ended up working with Deloitte. In sort of project management side on the software bit. That I did that until they moved me out to Hong Kong in 99, where I headed up e-business for Deloitte across Asia. Then I joined a digital advertising agency as the regional MD, running their Asia division with 4 offices, about 10 million in revenue annually, I think at the time, about 160 staff. And then when the bubble burst in the .com market, sort of 2002 timeframe, they ended up shutting up their operation. I bought out bought out the operation, and that started my consultancy on digital, which is called User Strategy, which today is my holding company, which manages my private equity positions around the world.
So now, this has been an amazing journey spanning several decades. So can you tell us what has changed, how the landscape of technology has changed over the years, compared to when you started, say, in the 80s to now, where there's an explosion of new technologies, industries are being disrupted. So can you tell us any parallels or any differences between that era and now?
Well, I think, you've got obviously computing platform changes, which, started with, like going to, where like PCs became more and more powerful and the servers and so forth. And so that really sort of introduced us to this sort of distributed computing model, where we're trying to make resources efficient, and also emerging, in parallel with that was sort of the database world, Oracle, Ingress, Informix, those sort of technologies, relational database technologies. I actually worked on a platform called Kik. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but it was developed. It was one of the first relational databases on mainframe and mid-range computing platforms. It used BASIC as a programming language, but had sort of a relational database, sort of better than SQL in respect to the way it categorized and indexed and stuff. Anyway, so then you have, we try to get to relational databases on computing platforms. Then we start doing object-oriented programming. Object-oriented programming takes us down this sort of world of viewing database design very differently. You could look at blockchain as sort of evolution of those days in terms of database design, now trying to get objects that we can tokenize, but also on a sort of a distributed data basis.
Now we are living in a very deep and radical technological disruption. So, as you mentioned, new technologies are coming up. We have larger computing capacity, things like blockchain and machine learning, artificial intelligence. they are. What do you feel about this? Like, are they going in the right direction, or because a lot of people are scared of artificial intelligence, and they are afraid that it may take over. So, what are the challenges do you think which are posed by these latest disruptions?
Well, the first element of this is that when you look historically at how AI or rather not AI technology is disrupted, you realize that over 250 years, no one has successfully resisted technological change. There's very few instances of that has been successful. So I think we rather than spending our time thinking of whether we should or shouldn't with artificial intelligence, I think we need to start thinking about how we do it, right? How do we get machines that we can ensure we keep an element of control over? How do we eliminate racial bias and gender bias and things like that from machine learning constructs? So how do we plan employment in a world that's heavily disrupted by automation? All of those things I think we can start doing rather than thinking, should we or shouldn't we do AI? Because essentially capital markets will make us do AI because of the massive competitive advantage it brings and the returns it will bring for shareholders. So we've got that, unless we can sort of kill AI, unless we could sort of kill the capital markets, then we're going to be heavily incentivized to continue down this path.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So in your book, Augmented, you have categorized technological ages as industrial or machine age or the atomic age. And the current age that we're living in, you have characterized as the augmented age. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How is this an augmented age, and what kind of effects it has on our species?
So if you look at the industrial age, we've gone through a number of sort of ages. They've been characterized by the pursuits of specific technologies and so forth. So we start off with the machine age, then we get to the space age and atomic age, right? And then we have the digital age, that sort of emerged. So, these are all characterized by, different employment patterns and different sort of focuses and core skills. So the augmented age, though, I wanted to be more about how humanity is augmenting itself, and so how that drives the way we think we fit in society and so forth. So I was focused more on how society changes when we're immersed in technology around us. And I'm thinking about a time when we talk to computers and they talk back to us, when we wear computers in our face with smart glasses, and we ingest sensors in our body that manage our healthcare. We have pattern recognition around us, and all these sort of technologies embedded in the world's sensors, like self-driving cars with ultrasonics and 3D point map based on lidar technology and stuff. So I really see that we're augmenting humanity with these technologies, and that changes the way we interact. From simple things like when you get a smartphone, and people now spend huge amounts of time on their smartphone, or doing stuff like selfies, or trying to become Instagram influencers. So there's societal change. So that's why I sort of classified this as different from a lot of people talk about fourth industrial revolution being when the robots sort of really impact and automation changes things. But I think there's sort of a step there, or a human lens on it.
Awesome. And so, these type of changes that we are going through right now, it hasn't really touched a large part of the population in the world. Like, a lot of people don't even have internet access. So when do you think this transformation will complete? Like, do you think there will be a sort of a universal effect that will be felt by the human population across the world, or is it still going to be fragmented, where some people are on the edge of the technology, some people are really behind?
So I think, you're talking about digital exclusion. The reality is, I think, by the middle of next decade, most people will have a personal computing device like a smartphone. Because smartphones will, the cost of producing them, a basic smartphone is now very, very cheap. A manufacturer can produce one for, rich feature phone, low entry smartphone for, on mass levels at like $10, and so, that means that in terms of accessibility, everyone's getting this computer in their pocket. Then the only question is internet access. So you have Google working on technologies for that. Obviously, SpaceX is deploying the Starlink low Earth orbit network for this purpose. Facebook is investing in their drones with this capability. So we have a number of sort of emerging technologies that will give broad internet access. So you combine those two things, and essentially by the end of next decade, everyone on the planet will have access to more information instantly through a handheld device than Bill Clinton had when he started as president of the United States.
Yeah, that's for sure. And do you think, by extension, internet access could be something like a free commodity, free for everyone?
Well, I think it gets to that point where the cost of data is essentially nothing. It does raise a question of what telcos will be charging for.
Yeah.
And I think that model is continuously being disrupted. The other element is, we could essentially use a form of mesh networking where every device talks to each other device and becomes their own nodes in sort of a super internet. And so theoretically, then you just need a contact point to the global telecoms backbone network that does data transmission country to country, right? So you can have all these mesh networking nodes, which are individual computers, individual IoT devices and sensors, and they all talk to each other, and as a result, create this sort of broad net of communication capability. And so 5G is sort of moving us a little bit towards that. But I think we will require telecoms infrastructure embedded for the next 50 years. Beyond that, it gets a bit fuzzy. There's a whole range of really interesting communication things we're working on, like entangled quantum states and things like that, where we could use essentially quantum messaging. But as to how far away we are from using that as a communication method, and possibly that could be superluminal as well, which the laws of physics on this are a little bit unclear as yet, but we're testing on this. But we could use entangled quantum states as a communication device with astronauts on Mars, for example. I'm getting way off topic, I know. But
no, this is all interesting stuff. I mean, that's what we talk about, right? All right. What do you make of cryptocurrencies? A lot of populations around the world, countries are there in the process of eliminating cash, the traditional cash. So, what do you make of this phenomenon?
So I think crypto, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, in Bank 4.0, I wrote extensively about the most disruptive innovations that we've seen throughout history. And so, automobile, the internet was a big disruptor. Elon Musk with SpaceX, the iPhone, all of these super disruptive products share one thing in common, is that they're based on first principles engineering designs. And so when you look at how to change the world and how you would change the way people conduct commerce, an obvious target is money. And money is designed very poorly for the internet age. And so if you were going to use first principles engineering to design money today, what would it look like? Would it look like a US dollar, a digitized US dollar, or would it look like a cryptocurrency? And it would probably look a lot more like a cryptocurrency, because the first thing we'd realize if we were designing money from scratch today is that geographical boundaries don't make any sense for value exchange today. And so you go for something that was not bounded by geographies.
So you think this trend will continue, and maybe in a few decades we will have cashless societies?
Yeah, I think so. I think physical cash is probably only got about a decade left before it's relegated just to simple edge cases. I don't think cash will ever become illegal in a country like the United States, for example. But it would become to the point where it's fairly useless because no one would accept it, right? So there's a great quote from William Gibson on this in one of his novels. He says, he's talking about exactly this point, and he says, it won't be illegal for people to use it. It just won't be very useful, right? And so physical currency, in terms of its utility, is declining the more and more that our commerce and retail exchanges become digital. So there's a logical point where physical cash just isn't convenient, isn't secure, and isn't as useful as using your mobile wallet.
Yeah.
But so that sort of ties it all together. No, that ties.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
The other element is when you start talking about value exchange, you get into the fact that the majority of wallets owned in, say, the 2030s will be wallets owned by devices and not by humans, right? You'll have a lot of devices transacting. You'll have autonomous cars paying road tolls and road tax and earning an income and things like that. So again, the way we think about identity, the way we think about transactions and money is all centered around someone going into a bank branch using a driver's license or a passport to get a physical passbook or card and draw cash out when they need to pay for stuff. And that's a very human oriented system. So increasingly, as we extend that to IoT and so forth, again, the money paradigm and the banking paradigm we have don't work, where crypto provides advantages, and not just crypto, but the tokens that we can use based around utility of core assets. And then you can get into a sort of very interesting AI to AI bartering system where for example, you could say, I'm an Uber driver, I'll go out and drive and I'll trade my miles driven for access to food or accommodation, so it allows for a lot more flexibility. I don't know how central banks will feel about it though.
So that was somewhat of a related question I was going to ask, because apart from daily activities in terms of how we transact with each other, it has a huge geopolitical implications, right? Like the whole world is sort of revolving around US dollars, but if US dollar becomes kind of useless, then what are the global implications in terms of standing of countries and their control over the global politics?
Well, I think climate change is going to naturally change that as well. I think obviously China, in the short term, the economies that succeed, the economies that break out over the next 50 years are going to be those that invest heavily in intelligent infrastructure, smart infrastructure, I call it in Augmented. So smart cities with strong automation, smart citizen systems, all that sort of stuff. That provides you with true economic advantage. And so the lack of investment in infrastructure in the US, for example, is likely to mean it will slip behind both China and India, sometime in the future as a result of that lack of technology, core technology investment. They sort of leave it to Silicon Valley, right? So that's the first phase. The first phase is where you have a sort of a realigning of economies built around artificial intelligence and automation. The linkage to labor participation becomes weaker with economic growth, because the core capabilities of an economy are geared towards how much automation you have deployed, not how many people are working. You then need to think about social impact of those people, universal basic income, other things like that to mitigate those changes brought about by technology-based unemployment. So that's the first phase of this. The second phase is that as you have artificial intelligence, change the way we work, we start working less, right? And then, you need purpose, you need passion as a human race to deal with that. So then climate change offers that. It offers us the ability, for example, to become very focused on undoing the damage that we've done to the planet and so forth. So particularly as sea rise starts to impact more and more coastal areas, and we have 300 million immigrants displaced by sea level rise, all of these sorts of things. So that then leads you to a period of social consciousness, social wokeness, if you like, where people are waking up to the fact that the best solution is one for all of humanity, not that your tribe or your government or your piece of soil should have an advantage. At least I hope. And so I think the trend towards sort of a more global consciousness and global operating system for the planet is probably fairly inevitable. But you never know.
Awesome. Yeah.
Countries are
That's
pretty
great.
sticky. Countries are pretty sticky constructs, so although most of the countries that existed 300 years ago don't exist today, so there is that, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, what other sort of predictions you can make for the future that's coming? Like let's go back to artificial intelligence. When do you think we will see the rise of general artificial intelligence?
AGI, yeah. So, for your listeners who aren't familiar with the concept, AI is sort of developing in three, meta stages. So right now we're in a phase where machines learn, so they can learn to do specific tasks. Most of this is through, we started off developing this type of, artificial intelligence using expert systems, trying to encode human behavior. Now we can do that through data synthesis or observation, where machines can actually learn human behavior and learn trends and learn systems through, artificial neurons built into a neural net. We call those perceptrons. Now, once you have enough core competency in these different machine learning algorithms, so you have an algorithm that can drive a car, you have an algorithm that can vacuum your floor at home, you have an algorithm that can, converse with you at a highly competent level, natural language processing and all that sort of stuff. You can take all of these aggregate capabilities and you can put them into sort of a meta grouping or classification to build AGI based on all of those different skill sets. And so that's how we think it probably will go. Although there are efforts to codify AGI consciousness primarily through more of a sort of communication skills element. So you'll have AGI that will be able to converse like a human and think, and problem solve from a dialogue perspective. But that's only just one part that passes the Turing test, perhaps, but it's only one part of general intelligence, because you can talk about concepts, you can have a dialogue, but then being able to reason, being able to look at problem statements and figure out solutions to those requires a lot of abstract information as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. And what about the concern that people have these days about their privacy? Because all these big corporations, they are sucking up the data that we are producing, and they are turning back and selling the same data back to us. So where do you think this industry is going in terms of securing our data, protecting it, making sure it's not misused for any type of purpose, whether it's political or military or any other purpose?
There's numerous things to consider here. First of all, there's data and there's data, right? You know, the most important data that we sort of classify might be you know, very personal information about us. You know, maybe our bank balance. You know, details about our children's health. You know, this sort of stuff. And I think that data should be protected. And I think there needs to be some controls over that. But then the secondary class of data that would be useful in terms of anticipating your behavior, understanding what you do when you do it, so that as an AI that is built to support you, I can understand the best ways to do that. And I will need to, you know, use that data, you know, and pass that data to other people to, you know, get a response to you that's appropriate in real time, right? And so in that scenario, you're getting direct value from that because an AI is sort of tying that value back. Then then the third category, if someone says, well, I want your data because it's going to help my AI learn, or it's going to help me target other people like you, that there should be a you know, tradable element to that, where you could say you can have my data and either you give me something in return, which is of equal value, or you pay me, you know. And so I think it crosses the gamut. I certainly think that there's an element, we can't have a one size fits all for this. And there's certainly data that I will want disclosed in order to get the best level of service from sort of an AI architecture.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I think we are almost over time, but it has been a very interesting, educational, entertaining discussion. I would love to bring you back because you have such a wealth of information and knowledge about this industry and life in general. So thank you so much.
I know I got a bit sci-fi. I know I got a bit sci-fi on you today, but I think that you know, I got the impression that that's the sort of thing you're looking for. So
exactly. No, I mean, it's always good to, you know, look at the future and see, you know, what people like you see, so that we can prepare better for it.
Right.
So thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for that, Manuj. Okay, take care.
Thank you so much. Before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you?
Sure. You can go to brettking.com. You can check me out on Amazon, of course. You know, my books are on there. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Brett King. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Brett King Author is the page on Facebook. I'm on Insta. Brett_K on Instagram. And of course, you can also reach out through the team at movein.com.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
No problem. See you later.
Great. And that's all for now. Until next time. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a career professional, then I invite you to join our growing community. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. As a welcome bonus, you will get the Startup Founders Technology Accelerator video series and Mastering Your Inner Game video series absolutely free. This series of short videos address some core issues which are instrumental in helping you move forward in your business or career. The videos are yours to view and share for free. No obligations or strings attached, except for one. You have to take action and implement it. So join us today. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. If you want more engaging videos and insightful interviews with industry's thought leaders, then check out the other videos we have picked for you. The link is right there. And if you want to be notified about our new content, please do consider subscribing to our channel.